Hello, Algebra Scholars. Sections 2.1 and 2.2 are both devoted to solving first-degree equations. Although our textbook just says solving equations, I like to really talk about these as first-degree equations because later on this year we're going to solve second-degree equations, and there's a whole different series of steps that we'll use to solve second-degree equations. And by the time the end of the year comes, you're really going to need to know how to do both. So we're going to call this solving first-degree equations. Emphasis on the first. First degree just means that none of the variables will have an exponent other than 1. Everything will be x to the first or y to the first. So I've written out for you here a long series of steps that I want you to make sure you have in your notes. And then we're going to abbreviate all of these things to a much shorter and much easier to remember set of notes. So step 1 will always be to clear any parentheses using the distributive property. Your problem may not have parentheses in it, and that would mean, okay, I can skip step 1. If your problem has fractions in it, we're then going to clear the fractions, and the way we're going to do that is we're going to multiply every term, not just the terms with fractions, but every term by the least common denominator. Once we've cleared the parentheses and cleared the fractions, we're then going to take any like terms that are on the left of the equal sign and we will combine them. We will do the same on the right side of the equal sign. Once we've accomplished that, we will take any terms on the right side of the equal sign that have variables in them and we'll shift them over to the left side. We will then move any terms that are just constants that are on the left side, we will move those over to the right. Once we've accomplished that, we'll divide both sides by the leading coefficient. And you can see here how I've taken all of those steps and rules and long phrases and condensed them down pretty quickly to step 1, clear the parentheses. Step 2, clear the fractions. Step 3, combine like terms. Step 4, move your variable term from the right to the left. Step 5, move your constant term from the left to the right. And step 6, divide by the leading coefficient. Now if we want, we can condense these even further to just say step 1 is parentheses. Step 2 is fractions. Step 3, combine like terms. Steps 4 and 5 we can really combine together so that all the terms with variables are on the left and all the term with constants are on the right. And then the last step is divide by the leading coefficient, so we can condense things even more. And here are two examples of solving equations. The first example has no parentheses and has no fractions in it. So we can skip right to the third step, which is combining like terms. So to combine like terms, we're going to look at just the left side separately from the right side. We're not going to move anything across the equal sign here. We're just going to look to combine like terms. So I have a 3x and a negative 5x, and when I combine those together, I get negative 2x. The 7 has no like terms to go with it. On the right side of the equal sign, I have 12 minus 7, and 12 minus 7 is 5, and the 4x has no like terms to go with it. Now, the fourth step says, take any variable terms that are on the right and move them over to the left. Now, to do that, to get rid of this term from the right, I actually have to subtract it from the right side. And if I subtract it from the right, I have to subtract it from the left. So I get negative 2x minus 4x is negative 6x. And then I need to subtract the 7. I need to move the constant term, this is step 5, from the left over to the right. And I get negative 6x equals negative 2. Let's move up here. Whoops, negative. Hold on there. Let's erase that. Negative 6x equals negative 2. And my last step says divide by the leading coefficient. So I'm going to divide both sides by negative 6. So on the left, I'm just left with an x, And on the right, I'm left with negative 2 over negative 6. And I know a negative divided by a negative is a positive. And 2/6 simplifies to 1/3. In the second example, I still don't have fractions to deal with, but I do have parentheses, and that needs to be my first step. So I'm going to distribute the 3. So 3x plus 6. I'm going to distribute the 4, negative 8x, and here I'm going to be careful because a negative times a negative is a positive. And the right side I'll just leave alone for now. Although I could combine like terms in this step, I'll do it all together at once. So step 3 says combine like terms. Those are like terms, 3x minus 8x, that gives me negative 5x. The 6 and the 12 are like terms, they're both positive, so that gives me 18. On the right side, 2x and the 3x gives me 5x, and negative 5 plus 7 gives me 2. I now need to get all my variable terms on the left. To do that, I'm going to subtract 5x from both sides. Now let's be careful here. Whereas these cancel out on the right side, on the left side they don't. I end up with negative 10x. Be tempting to cancel them, but we'd be wrong. Then I need to move the 18 over. So once again, we'll move over to the side here. And on the left side, we have negative 10x. And on the right side, we have 2 minus 18, which is negative 16. And then to finish it off, we're going to divide both sides by negative 10. We're going to remember that a negative divided by a negative is a positive. And 2 goes into both of these numbers. So our final answer is positive 8/5. And here's a final example where we're going to need to use all of our steps. So let's just remember what the steps are. First step is clear the parentheses. Second step is to clear the fractions. Third step is combine like terms. Fourth step is to get your variables on the left and your constants, and your constants on the right. That's really your fourth and your fifth step. So we'll call this 6. And our last step is divide by the leading coefficient. So remembering that step number 1 is to clear the parentheses. Do not clear the fractions in the first step. Do not get rid of the parentheses first. So distributing, we have 4/3 x minus, when we distribute 1/3 times 6, we get negative 2. The 1/2 is unaffected. Let's try that again, it's messy. Plus 1/2. We distribute here, we have 3x plus 3 over 2. The minus 2 is unaffected by distributing. So that's step 1. Step 2, now we can clear the fractions. And to do so, we need the least common denominator of 3, 2, and 2, which we know is 6. But we have to remember, when we multiply by the least common denominator, we multiply every term by the least common denominator, not just the terms that are fractions. So we're going to multiply 4/3 x by 6 over 1. We're going to multiply 2 by 6. We're going to multiply 1/2 by 6 over 1. We're going to multiply 3x times 6. We're going to multiply 3 over 2 times 6 over 1, and then negative 2 times 6. I want you to notice how I multiplied every single term by 6. But you'll notice the difference. When I multiplied a fraction by the LCD, I wrote it as 6 over 1. When I multiplied just a number that didn't have a denominator, or a variable term that didn't have a denominator by the LCD, I just wrote 6. There's no need to write 6 over 1 there. So let's clean all this up and see what happens. When we clean up this first term, we have 24x over 3, which is simply 8x. Here we get minus 12. In the third term, we get 3. On the other side, we get 18x plus 9 minus 12. Notice now we've done the first two steps. Check, check. Parentheses are gone, fractions are gone. Now it's a very simple problem to combine like terms. Negative 12 plus 3 is negative 9, and 9 minus 12 is negative 3. I'm going to move my variable term from the right side to the left side. 8x minus 18x is negative 10x. I'm going to add 9 to both sides so that I get negative 10x equals 6, and I'm going to divide both sides by negative 10. Positive divided by a negative, I know my answer is going to be negative, and 6 over 10 reduces to 3 over